Hi everyone, welcome to Itsy Bitsy's live read of Battling Beckett by T. Christensen. Chapter 1. Don't talk to me and don't tell anyone you know me. Beckett Dawson's cold demands scraped along her skin. Her soon-to-be stepbrother usually spoke to her in a cold monotone. The threatening edge was new and made the nervous knot in her stomach tighten. The rest of her body sat motionless in the passenger seat. Greer Smith's head was lowered, and her shoulder-length brown hair concealed the side of her face. Her first instinct was to bite back at him, but she took some breath to quell that notion. She needed to think before she acted. "Do you hear me?" Beckett's sneered question had her tightening her hands into fists. She snuck a glance at him out of the corner of her eye. His chiseled jaw was locked, and his bronze eyes were hidden behind aviators, but she knew they were cold and indifferent, the same way he had looked at her for the past 2 weeks. She drew another breath, lifted her head to look out the windshield, and concentrated on making sure her reply was calm and steady. "Yes, we don't know each other." Beckett's response was to turn the music up to a bass-pounding, windshield-shaking level. Greer slowly let out the breath she had been holding, relieved that they were back to ignoring each other. The plan had been to have her mom, Vivian, take her to her new school, but Vivian's new fiancé, David Dawson, stunned everyone in the kitchen last night when he overruled. "That is ridiculous. Beckett is already going there. He will take Greer." David continued eating, like he hadn't just dropped a bomb. Vivian and Greer's eyes had widened at each other before they swung toward Beckett's rigid body. Vivian had turned back to David. "I can take Greer. I really don't mind, David," Vivian hastily assured her fiancé. David looked up, seemingly oblivious to the tension at the table. He leaned toward Vivian and cupped her cheek with one hand. "Honey, your work is in the opposite direction. Beckett doesn't mind." He pinned Beckett with a razor-sharp look. "Do you, Beckett?" Now here Greer was in a supple black leather bucket seat with white stitching that was amazingly comfortable. She thought all car seats were treated the same. She was wrong. Too bad she wasn't enjoying it. The barely veiled hostility radiating from Beckett had been present since she and her mom had moved in 2 weeks ago. Being in a truck, a place where she was unable to escape, was excruciating. She hadn't moved a muscle since she had reluctantly entered the gleaming black pickup truck. The air, as usual, between them was thick, but inside the confines of the truck it was stifling. Luckily, her after-school job at the coffee shack was within walking distance from her new school. And since Beckett had football there, would be no forced share riding after school. They were a couple of blocks from the start of the lush Green Oak High School campus when Beckett pulled over to the curb and shut the music off. Looking straight ahead, he said in a dead serious voice, "Get out." Greer looked around the busy city corner. "Seriously?" The aviator lenses turned in her direction, and she saw her face reflected. If we don't know each other, how would I explain you getting out of my truck?" She didn't mind walking. It wasn't far. She was just stunned. Wordlessly, she undid her seatbelt and slid out of the truck to the ground. As soon as the door clicked shut, the glimmering black Mercedes truck shot forward and was soon out of sight. He actually did it. He drove away and left her. Greer didn't know why she was surprised, but she was. He had left without a backward glance. She slid the backpack she was holding over her shoulders and started the walk to her new elite private high school. 10 minutes later, Greer was admiring the awning the big old oak trees formed along the drive up to the school's wrought iron gates. A week ago, Greer and her mom had entered the imposing gates for the first time. They had both gotten out of the car in front of the administrative building and slowly took in the private high school she would be attending. Greer had lived in New Hampshire her entire life, but obviously only knew the middle-class sights. What was before them was straight out of a movie. If Greer didn't know better, she would swear they were in London. The school had a distinct old royal feel. The sprawling Tudor-style school had rustic red bricks, imposing arches, and intimidating doors. Ivy was clinging to the building, and the grounds were covered in artistic brush sculptures, colorful flowers, and sprawling oak trees, and lush green grass as far as the eye could see. Off in the distance she could make out the shape of a football stadium, and she had seen tennis courts as they drove by the oak trees lining the road. Greer couldn't believe they were in Manchester, New Hampshire. She had turned wide-eyed to her mom and whispered, "How much is this costing?" Her mom's odd look disappeared, replaced by determination. Vivian looked over the top of her white Honda Accord and declared, "That is my job to worry. All you need to worry about is taking advantage of everything this school offers. Being able to list Oak High on a college application gives you a leg up on other candidates." She knew she shouldn't have asked the next question burning in her, but she had to know. Ever since she could remember, her mom had preached about the importance of taking care of herself. Never depend on a man. And now, a mere 2 weeks after announcing her engagement, they had moved into David's mansion, and they were at one of the top private schools in the country. Is David paying for this? Vivian Smith never broke her gaze from Greer's. "No, David got you in. I am paying for it." Her mom was a paralegal. Even with David paying for all the other expenses, Greer knew the tuition still had to be a stretch for her. "I don't have to go here, Mom. I'll be fine at public." Her mom's expression lightened and filled with love. "I know you would be, but I want this for you." Greer wasn't sure she wanted it for herself. She had never been the new kid at school, and she wasn't sure she wanted to start as a senior in high school. She knew this was important to her mom, and Vivian was right. Going to the school would look good on her college applications. So she pasted a smile on her face and said, "Okay, let's go make this official." Now that the first day was upon her, the closer her feet took her to campus, the more her nerves ratcheted up. With each step more and more groups of students appeared. The ball in her stomach was gradually working its way up her throat. Her heart was fluttering like a hummingbird, and she felt like she had just run a marathon instead of walking a couple of blocks. It was like she was walking toward a death sentence instead of school. Heads started turning her way. She pretended to be oblivious and tightened her grip on the strap of her backpack. Conversations came to a halt as she approached, and then resumed with hushed whispers as she passed. The school had enrollment of 1,200 for grades 9 through 12, and she had a feeling someone new in their midst was rare. The further she walked, the more she realized she had already stuck out like a sore thumb. The pit of her stomach fell, and she had to concentrate on regulating her breathing. The one thing she didn't think about was she had to worry about was what was making her stand out. Oak High had uniforms, but hers did not look like anything like the other girls. Greer had chosen a lined black skirt that fell above her knees. She had worn simple black canvas shoes with a white polo. Every other girl with a form-fitting micro-skirt. The only thing their skirts had in common was they were black. Some were so short, Greer wasn't sure how they would be able to sit. Both girls and boys were required to wear a white shirt with a collar. She had apparently missed in the footnote that the girls had to wear button-down white sheer silk shirts with the ends tied. All of them had enough buttons undone to reveal a glimpse of the lazy, brightly colored bra that they had on. Heels were the only shoes she saw. They might have been ankle boots, high-thigh boots, stilettos, or any other type of shoes with a heel, but definitely no canvas. Greer gratefully stepped through the door of the administration building and felt her shoulders gradually ease down from her ears. As she lingered as long as possible in the office, grateful for the reprieve from the stares and whispers. She wasn't stupid enough to think she was done being the center of attention. Not only was she new, she stuck out like a fake diamond. With each morning class that passed, she got fewer wide-eyed stares, but the whispers and glances were rampant. She attempted to hide out in the library for lunch, but eventually she would have to face the scariest place for any new student at school, the lunchroom. The strategy was to pick something she wouldn't have to stand in line for and quickly find a corner table, hopefully a dark corner, but she wouldn't be too picky. As soon as she turned the corner into the dining hall, she understood why it wasn't called a cafeteria. There wasn't one big line where everyone got the same food. It was like a buffet restaurant with different types of food at each station. Greer spotted a station with fruits and vegetables and snagged a green apple. She stopped at one of the in-wall coolers with a glass door and selected bottled water. With her lunch in hand, she went around the corner and stopped. This definitely was not a cafeteria. It was fine dining. The tall windows with the Tudor arches lined three sides of the room, and the view was a picturesque campus. Plush burgundy carpet cushioned her feet. Wood tables with white tablecloths and upholstered floral-cushioned chairs greeted her. Someone brushing her shoulder awakened her from her slack-jawed awe. Greer started scouring the rapidly filling room for an empty two-person table when she slammed into Beckett's narrow brown eyes. Her breath came to a skittering halt. For once they weren't radiating hostility, but this was equally as disconcerting. What was he thinking? It was as if he was studying her, sizing her up. But why? Was she in some sort of test that she didn't know about? Panic started fluttering in her with the unknown. One of his friends elbowed him, and Beckett's attention left her. The brush she had been unaware she was holding left in a whoosh, and she headed toward the first empty table she found. Gratefully, she sank down into the chair facing the window. Once her heartbeat was under control and her hands were done shaking, she put earbuds in and picked up her phone. When her audiobook was playing, she closed her eyes and temporarily escaped from her new reality. The huge load from her shoulders magically disappeared as she stepped on the other side of Oak High's wrought iron gates. She had officially completed her first day. Only 9 months to go. Greer used the abundance of the aged trees to walk behind to escape the notice of Porsches, Maseratis, and Mercedes racing by her. The work at the coffee shack was familiar, and she sank into the routine. It was comforting to be in a place where no one was staring at her or judging her. Everyone was working or making small talk between lulls. When Lexi and Jen stepped through the door, she scrambled around the counter and threw her arms around her best friends. It had only been a week since she had seen them, but it felt like years. "Whoa, girl, it's good to see you too," Lexi whispered in her ear. Greer gave them a final squeeze and then broke away. "Thank you for coming." Jen shrugged. "We said we would. Besides, we can't resist your caramel lattes." Greer laughed for the first time all day. "I'm going to find Greg and see if I can take my break. Find a seat and I'll get our drinks. Iced or hot?" "Iced. Thanks, Greer." Jen gave her a wink and went to snag a booth at the back. "We can pay, Greer." Lexi was more reserved, like Greer, both in personality and looks. Lexi and Greer found each other in the 2nd grade. Neither one had jumped up to find a partner for their math game. After everyone else paired up, they had drifted together. They had quietly worked together, and ever since the two had been inseparable. Jen had joined the duo in middle school. She was adventurous and outgoing, the exact opposite of Lexi and Greer. Frequently, Jen talked Lexi and her into things they normally wouldn't consider. Greer squeezed Lexi's hand. "I know. I am just so happy to see you. It's my treat. Sit." Thank you for listening to this portion.